Hello and welcome to my channel, I Want to Lose Gaming. We have another brand new Abyss 12 and you know what that means? Another Abyss 12 video! Woohoo! Okay, it has been a hot minute since I've made one of these videos, and that is for many reasons, of one of which is because I guess I shouldn't really say too much about it, but basically I have to wait until, you know, it's available in North America now for my account to actually be able to play the Abyss 12, which means I'm like, I don't know, like 12 to 16 hours behind or however many hours behind. In comparison to the Asia servers, which is why I just kind of lost motivation because, you know, when it comes to uploading on YouTube, timeliness is king. And in this case, you know, it comes out when I'm asleep at 1 a.m. So yeah, that's why, you know, I just kind of stopped making these videos for a while because by the time I upload it, it's basically an entire day late in comparison to the Asia server. So anyway, though, I figured we would bring this back because this Abyss 12 really intrigued me because it looks absolutely dastardly. And I don't remember what the last Abyss 12 was, but nowadays Abyss 12 HP values have just gone up so much. So I had to bust out all the stops to actually clear this in the ways that I wanted to. And let's start off by taking a look at, I'm not going to call it a free-to-play friendly team because that's not what it is. It is a 4-star only team. And my first goal for this video was to just clear it with a 4-star only team. Of course, I will also show you guys a speed run of this Abyss 12, which is, you know, nowadays, the difference between, for example, like free-to-play, I mean, this, again, not free-to-play, but lower investment teams and speedrun teams is just so colossal. It's absolutely insane. But because I do think Natlan has been the region of power creep, so this has been quite something else. Now, this team, I definitely think there was a lot of extra time and in order to clear it in time, but we can see start off with Xiangling with just a very cookie cutter the catch build, and she's built with, you know, kind of a balance of more focus on attack percent because we're going to need a lot of raw power damage, but her innate elemental mastery stat helps her a lot with this Abyss 12. Up next we do have Yan-san. She is pretty well built with a Favonius as well as the 4-piece scroll of the Hero of Cinder City, and she is at Constellation 6, so this definitely helps her out because it gives 30% attack. And I don't think this part came into play too much, 5% bonus damage, because this team struggles to maintain it at max stacks, but still obviously very helpful for Yan-san to have these constellations. And yeah, so do keep that in mind. Up next we have Auroron, who is using, actually he's using the Moon's Moon, so not as free-to-play friendly of a bow. I guess I could have used the Favonius or something instead of the Stringless, but yeah, I forgot that he was on that. He is also at Constellation 6, which does provide some attack percent as well, which definitely helps out the team. And finally, we have Chevreuse overloaded with the, whatchamacallit, the Favonius Lance, a typical HP build with over 40,000 HP and as much crit rate as I can muster. So that way she can indeed still provide Favonius procs for the greedy character that is Xiangling, such an energy hungry character. So that is the first team for this Abyss 12. And now the second team for Abyss 12 is, we're not pulling any punches because again, these Abyss 12 HP values are absolutely insane these days. We have the 4-piece Noblesse Oblige and just standard Bennett build with tons of energy recharge, 312 energy recharge to be exact. And yeah, that's his stuff. So next up we have Rosaria, who is kind of a hybrid between an energy build as well as a damage build, because unfortunately we cannot let Gaming carry us through this. And this second half Abyss 12 is I really didn't like it personally, but yeah, you guys will see soon enough. But we have this event weapon as well as, you know, a 4-piece emblem set, and we have this, and finally we have Kaya, another cryo character, because cryo is very helpful in this Abyss 12, and he's just using, you know, the hand-me-downs of my Emblem of Severed Fate set. At this point, finally, we have Gami, who is using the Fruitful Hook. He's got a pretty okay, this crit rate might look absolutely appalling, but don't forget he gets 20% from this, and he gets 32% from this, and he gets some from Rosaria. So the crit rate's not as bad as it looks, and we also got a crit card as well. He's got pretty solid artifacts, and yeah, so those are the teams for this Abyss 12, at least for the 4-star only clear. I am absolutely certain that there are more free-to-play friendly teams and setups out there, but I wanted to get this video out to you guys in a reasonable amount of time because we do have to make other content as well. So starting right off, we're going to start off with the Hydrotolpa. Obviously this thing has complete immunity to hydro damage, so this top half of Abyss 12 is absolutely appalling for hydro characters, at least in terms of them doing damage. So yeah, but fortunately Xiangling, because she vapes on all of her hits on Pyronado, this is just a ton of free damage for Xiangling, and Overloaded is uniquely great against the Hydrotolpa because you are able to shred its pyro resistances with Overloaded on it. And also you want to kill the little minions that the thing summons, or else it will absorb them, turning into a super Hydrotolpa with, I believe, increased resistances, which makes it hard to kill. So anyway, this next chamber is, oh man. So personally, I really don't like it when enemies have incredible HP pools as well as tons of elemental shield. And hang on, I'm actually going to pause this run really quick, but we can see the top half actually has characters elemental skill geo damage increased by 75%. So I guess this is to like buff Kachina. And for the second half, we can see elemental skill cryo damage increases by 75%, which is one reason why I use Kaya and Rosaria to get that extra damage on their elemental skills for the second half. So anyway, back to the run. We can see that we are dealing with this enemy here, the Thundering, what is it called? The Thunder Abyss Lector, or whatever its name is. Yeah, so the Thunder Abyss Lector, after it reaches 20% HP, it generates that really thick Electro Shield, which the 3 elements you want to use against it are Pyro, Cryo, and Dendro. Those ones break it the fastest. Obviously, Electro doesn't do anything to it. And up next, we have the Millennial Seahorse, or whatever it's called. And this one has a pretty chunky Electro Pearl, where if you apply basically a ton of, again, Pyro, Cryo, or Dendro to its core, you are able to break it in time before it flies up into the air. When its Pearl thing is up, it will have drastically increased resistances, and now we can see that we are doing a lot more damage, a lot of reasonable damage to it with this. Unfortunately, you do kind of have to pick and choose between, okay, do I dump my resources now to break its Pearl earlier, or do I try to save my resources to one cycle it after I break its, it will summon 3 little things, which you can break with, again, these elements that I've mentioned this whole time, as well as Animagy. You can break those 3 little things, and you break those 3 little things, it will also knock it out of its enhanced Pearl state. This next chamber is one of the hardest Abyss 12 chambers that we have had to date. There are multiple restrictions to this because you are encouraged to use characters with Night Soul Blessing against this thing, because if you have Night Soul Blessings, it will speed up its like summoning pillars move, and if it summons its pillars, you have to climb up it, and the easiest ways to climb up it are with Natlin mobility. For example, Auroron here, he can just hold his jump in order to fly up top, as you can see there, in order to break the 2 little things on the pillars in order to knock it down. And once it's knocked down, this thing has drastically lowered resistances, where you can now actually deal some pretty decent damage, because before you knock it down, I believe it has 60% resistances across the board. And while that is definitely more manageable, like it's still worth hitting and attacking it properly, even with those high resistances, but it's still, definitely a major damage reduction in comparison to when you manage to knock it down. So yeah, anyway, here we are just basically doing the exact same thing, and for this team it takes 2 full rotations. You'll also, I forgot to mention that I did redo 12-1-1 in order to fill up the team's energies to full in order to tackle this chamber specifically, because this chamber specifically was the hardest one, at least for me, while I was running through this. Now the second half is pretty egregious because it has 3 enemies, and not only are these enemies fairly durable, with this robot guy having about 770,000 HP, but this next enemy is what makes this thing super annoying. And this thing takes very little damage from pyro damage. You can brute force it with enough pyro resistance shred, like, you know, a swirl plus a Viridescent Veneer swirl plus shielding it as an example, and someone like Mavwiki can still, you know, take it out pretty reasonably. But outside of that, especially for this team setup, we do not have that luxury. So instead, you know, here I am. Maybe actually Sucrose could have done some real work here, but I'm mainly relying on the cryo melt against this thing, and we aren't able to actually use the main source of our damage for this team, which is Gaming. And one little trick here that I'm doing is I'm actually building up my resources. I'm trying not to kill this thing too fast, because otherwise we run into an issue with the next enemy. So here we go. We finish it off with Kai's Elemental Skill. Now we can actually dump all of our resources here, and hopefully, this thing will drain all of your energy. As we can see, we didn't manage to squeeze Gaming's burst out. Now, had we actually squeezed Gaming's burst out, this would have been much easier. But alas, I guess it ended up working out. So this is why I'm saying there is a bit more flexibility, or a bit more leeway than I thought after trying this. Like, you know, this is, I guess, my second time trying it with this team. So after trying it a couple times, there is definitely more leeway than I expected. But still, as you can see, I'm actually going to rewind and replay this section a bit, because I didn't quite explain its mechanic enough. But basically what this thing does is that it will drain all of your energy across your entire team, which is why I try to dump all my bursts, and will create this weird, unique shield. This unique shield has like a bit over 100% of its HP, so roughly 1.35 million hit points or so. And what you have to do is you have to deal just regular old damage to get rid of that shield. And once you get rid of that shield, it will enter this kind of crippled state where it will also provide your entire team a full you know, energy for your entire team. And what makes that shield extra egregious, in my opinion, is that if you don't break it in time, it will then convert it into an electric shield, which you then have to break with the classic, you know, anti-electro elements, Pyro, Cryo, and Dendro. So either you're dealing with this thing with double the HP pool that it says it has, or you're dealing with another additional thick electro elemental shield on top of its HP pool. Either way, this chamber is already one of the beefiest chambers we've had in Abyss 12 to date, with 8.6 million hit points. Now, the next chamber, 12-3, was a bit more manageable. I didn't bother refilling my energy. You can see Xiangling is starting at 0 energy. If you know anything about Xiangling teams, well, you're going to be spending about 20 seconds just battering up Xiangling here. So I think I decided, okay, I'm just going to actually wait until the second rotation to get all the buffs on Xiangling, even though like I have it here. And yeah, so these boars can kind of spread out and run around, but yeah, you want to be careful with this chamber, because if you bring, for example, Bennett and you stand in Bennett's circle, these enemies can definitely one-shot you. So fortunately though, these two goofy, I don't even know what they're called, but like water spirit things, that they look really funny though. Like I don't know, it's like doing some lamp shenanigans and laser shenanigans. A mini Nuvolette, inspired by Nuvolette for sure. But anyway, these things, they do tend to stay grouped up pretty well and overloaded, very similar to the Hydrotulpa. You're able to shred both the Pyro and Electro resistances on this thing if you choose to run a Chevreuse team. Of course, just any Pyro characters deal really, or you know, do a really good job against these permanently Hydro-infused enemies, because obviously you are going to be able to get a lot of free vapes on these enemies. So yeah, not much to say besides that. They are a bit dangerous, so do be careful about, you know, dying to them, especially if you're using Bennett there. But I wasn't using Bennett there, so unlikely to get one shot at least. Now this team also didn't really have any energy, so we're going to build up some energy. We can see here that despite not having any energy for these teams, I'm still showing you this run, which means that we did manage to successfully clear. Now these little doggo creatures, they're not that remarkable. I think they have increased Animo resistance as well as increased Hydro resistance. You can see I'm just spending my entire time battering up the whole team here. So yeah, definitely a lot more leeway. And this 12-3 is no slouch either. It's got 7.5 million hit points. But anyway, these things you can freeze, and then if you shatter them or something like that, they get like stunned or whatever. But yeah, nothing too remarkable to say about them. But yeah, up next we have this Primordial Vishap thing, and honestly these enemies are pretty outdated at this point, but essentially this has increased Hydro resistance, and more importantly, you don't want to get hit by its like one of its like attacks. I'm not sure if it's all of its attacks, but some of its attacks, at the very least, one of its like energy ball attacks, it will drain your energy, so be careful about that. Up next, we have the constipated beast, the crocodile here, and the crocodile also resists hydro. So this is not a very hydro favored Abyss 12. We have, the top side having 2 chambers with literally hydro immune enemies, and we have this with a lot of hydro resistant enemies. Fortunately though, you are able to, if you have, decent resistance shred sources, these enemies don't have an insane amount of hydro resistance, so you are able to punch through them. Now this one in particular, the crocodile, it can summon like a little ward thing, and we are cutting the time pretty close here, but we did manage to clear it with 3 stars while battering up the entire team. Now, yeah, so that was the 4-star only team, and it wasn't pretty. I had to bust out some pretty solid artifacts as well as pretty solid gear in order to complete it in a reasonable amount of time. So up next, let's take a quick look at the speed run. It's just a standard Mavwika speed run. Now these enemies are designed for Mavwika to one-shot. You can see the Hydro Tulpa easily one-shot without even using Bennett's Burst. And this next enemy, I did bring Bennett in order to hopefully be able to one-shot this because of its elevated resistances and very large 5 million HP pool, but we were able to one-shot that with Mavwika's Elemental Burst. Of course, this is all Constitution 6 Refinement 5 whale stuff. So this one, it's a bit hard to see, and I might slow it down what happened here, but I actually used Mavwika's Elemental skill to one-shot the first wave of boars. We can see here that indeed one of the boars barely survived, but Mavwika's Constellation 6 appeared to take it out before Mavwika's Elemental Burst landed, which means that Mavwika's Elemental Burst is able to kill those 2 Fontanian local legend, what are they called? Vivian of the Lake and Niniani of the Lake enemies. So yeah, literally 15 seconds for Mavwika, Constitution 6 Refinement 5 Mavwika team to speedrun this Abyss 12. The gap is just growing bigger and bigger between whales as well as, I guess more free-to-play friendly teams, at least for this specific setup and chamber. Once you kind of introduce elemental shields back in the mix, that's when the gap tends to close a little bit. So yeah, that about covers it for the top half. Obviously, don't bring any Hydro DPS character. All the other DPS characters, except for maybe Dendro, will struggle a bit because you can't really run Aggravate and stuff like that, although you will get a decent amount of blooms. But yeah, so Dendro might struggle a bit in the top half. However, pretty much all the other elements, especially Pyro, will do quite well in the top half of Abyss 12. So Mavwika teams in the top half are going to have a field day. You can see there, overloaded teams, Vrissa will do well in the top half as well, so on and so forth. And also, don't forget against the secret source automaton to bring something that can climb the pillar. Sorry, I don't have all the options in mind, but a lot of players were doing some pretty interesting things to get up to the top of the pillars. But one thing's for sure, you can definitely use, for example, characters like Aurora, Sitlali, Shilinin, and Kachina to get up there with ease, as well as some other gimmicks like using tall characters to climb it. Certain things that, other players could have come up with that I don't quite know off the top of my head. And yeah, that's the top half of Abyss 12. And finally, for the bottom half, or the second half of Abyss 12, there's a lot of electro element shields. And in order to break those quickly, you want Pyro, Cryo, or Dendro. So perhaps some Dendro teams can work reasonably well, although you might struggle a bit against the Fluid Avatar of Lava, although Kanish team with burning and stuff should do pretty well here as well, because the Thundering Wild Manifestation, when it has a shield up, okay, I'm yapping too much, but you can apply elements to this thing with its initial HP only shield. And yeah, the second these enemies here as well, they're going to get eaten alive by a Kanish team, for example. But yeah, I think Nuvalek can work in the second half as well, especially if you bring a decent amount of Hydro Resistance shred, specifically for the Constipated Beast, as well as Primordial Bathysmal Vishap, and Shenyuan Beast. They all have elevated Hydro Resistances, but not by too much where you can't overcome it. I've already talked about that, and that about covers it. So let me know what you think about this Abyss 12. I think it was one of the... I don't know, I feel like it indicates more power creep than usual with the extremely high HP values for, essentially all 3 of these Abyss 12 chambers. And does that reflect the improved power level of people's accounts? You'll have to let me know down in the comments below. I do think if you pulled for some of the modern Natlan characters, the answer to that is probably yes, but if you're not pulling them, then it's probably going to be a bit more challenging for most players. Let me know what you managed to clear this Abyss 12 with down in the comments below. Let me know if you couldn't clear this Abyss 12 and you know what you struggled with as well. And yeah, as always, I appreciate every single one of you. This is I Went to Lose, signing out.